Hi, I'm Nate Savage and welcome to video 3 of the Rhythm Guitar Quick Start series. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to move the power chord shapes that we learned in the last lesson all around the fretboard to play any power chord you want. This way, if a bandmate or a friend that you're jamming with or even some sheet music tells you to play a specific power chord, you're going to have a way to go right to that power chord competently. Now, in order to be able to move your power chords around efficiently, you're going to have to know the note names on the 6th and 5th strings. Let's start with our low E string. Below, you're going to see a graphic with the names of the notes on the first 12 frets. Those are going to be your root notes for your power chords. You're going to want to eventually memorize the notes on the 6th string, but for now, you can use this graphic as a reference. Now, if you look at the note names on the first 12 frets, you're probably going to notice that they're just the names of the first 7 letters of the regular alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. We're just starting with an open E string. You're going to see those natural notes with some sharp and flat notes in between. Don't worry too much about the sharp and flat notes on the low E string right now. I just want you to realize that the notes come from somewhere that you're already familiar with, just the first 7 letters of the natural alphabet. This may take a little while for you to memorize, and that's totally fine, but the good thing is you're already doing something that's going to help you memorize it. As we work on our power chords throughout this lesson and in your daily practice, you'll eventually start to memorize the notes on the low E string. What we're going to do now is just put a G power chord that we learned in the last lesson on, just the 2-note version. And if you remember, I told you that the note you're playing with your index finger is always the root note of that power chord. So that's a G note on the 3rd fret. So that means that this power chord is a G power chord. Now, the cool thing about power chords is they're movable. You can move them anywhere as long as your index finger is on either the 6th string or the 5th string. So I can move this anywhere and it's still a power chord, but wherever my index finger goes, that changes the name of that power chord. So let me give you an example of this. If I were to move this G power chord down 2 frets to where my index finger was on the 1st fret of the low E string, and then my 3rd finger was on the 3rd fret of the A string, I would be playing an F power chord. Look at the graphic. That 1st fret is labeled as an F, and that's where we get our name for our power chord. So index finger's on the 1st fret on an F, that means we have an F power chord. So let's do this again. Let's move this power chord around and see if you can find out what power chord we're playing. Put your index finger on the 5th fret of the low E string. Put the rest of the shape on. And look at the graphic. What note is that 5th fret? That's an A, so that means we're playing an A power chord. So that may seem really simple to you, and if so, that's great because it is simple. You can move this power chord anywhere on the 6th string and play just tons of power chords. And if this seems a little bit harder for you, the one challenging part of this is memorizing the root notes on the low E string. So, start off with the natural notes. F here on the 1st fret, G on the 3rd fret, A on the 5th fret, and so on. The natural notes will come easier, and once you practice this more and more, you'll start to memorize where the sharp and flat root notes are too. As I mentioned earlier, you can play your power chords either on your 6th string root note or your 5th string root note. So take a look at the graphic below and you're going to see the note names on the A string too. This is the exact same progression of notes. The only real difference is we're starting on an A instead of an E. So let's play a power chord with our root note or our index finger on the A string. Let's go to the 5th fret of the A string. Put your index finger on there or your root note, and then let the rest of your shape fall in place. Your 3rd finger is going to come grab the 7th fret of the D string. And check out what note you're playing on the 5th fret with your index finger. That's going to give your power chord its name. This is a D note right here on the 5th fret of the A string. So we're going to be playing a D power chord there. And you can move this shape just like the 6th string root note shape. You can move this all the way up and down the fretboard anywhere you want. And when your root note that your index finger is playing changes, the name for that specific power chord changes. So, for example, if I put my index finger back here on the 3rd fret of the A string, that's a C. So, put the rest of my shape on, and I'll be playing a C power chord. So, you may be thinking, Nate, what is the point of learning 6th and 5th string root note power chords? That'd be a good question. Let me show you what the value of this is by giving you a quick example. If I wanted to play a G, C, D power chord progression, that's just a common chord progression, and I only use 6 string root notes for that, check out what I would have to do. I would play a G power chord, because that's a G note on the 3rd fret of the 6th string. Now, if I wanted to play a C, I would have to move all the way up here to the 8th fret to play that, because this is a C note with my index finger, our root note. Then a D would be 2 frets up on the 10th fret. So I could play a G, C, D progression using power chords with just 6 string root notes. G, C, D. And that's fine, but that's kind of a lot of shifting around to do. Now, it's much more efficient to mix up your 5th and 6th string root note power chords to play progressions like this, just because you don't have to jump around so much. So, if I start here on my G power chord again, what I can do is play a C right here using a 5th string root note power chord, because the 3rd fret of the 5th string is a C. And now, to play a D, what I can do is move up to where my index finger is on the 5th fret, because that's a D. I can play a D power chord there. So instead of jumping around to play G, C's, and D's using just 6 string root notes, I can use 6 and 5th string root notes to play G's, C's, and D power chords. So I hope you see the value in being able to use both your 6th and 5th string root note power chords to, move around instead of just jumping all over the fretboard, right? Just make sure you concentrate on playing them cleanly as you work through them. So to help you work on your power chords and your power chord transitions, I've made a jam track for you. It's a really simple jam track that just goes through a G, C, D progression. And basically what we're gonna do is just stay on a G for one measure. And if you only hit a whole note, that's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do quarter notes too. Then it moves to a C for the next measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then D for a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can work on mixing your 6th and 5th string root note power chords up, or you can stay all on your 6th string or all on your 5th string. It's up to you. Here's a little example of what it might sound like when you practice this. Thanks for watching this lesson. It's a lot of information, I know, so feel free to come back and review it if you need to. But being able to move power chords around like this is an extremely valuable skill to have as a rhythm guitarist. In the next lesson, we're going to cover one of the most feared topics for newer players, and that's bar chords. But don't worry, I'm going to give you some tips for making your bar finger really strong and then making your bar chords sound clean too. If you have any questions, leave them here in the comments or email me, Nate@guitarsystem.com, and I'll see you.